Welcome to update number 21 on the Lackawanna cutoff, where we're going to be talking about a presidential prediction and the cutoff. Hi, I'm Chuck Walsh, and yes, we're going to give you a prediction on the U.S. presidency for November 2024, and we're going to talk about its potential impact on the cutoff, both the New Jersey Transit project to Andover and the Amtrak project between New York City and Scranton. Now, in my last update, which is number 20, I got a little bit of flack. There were people complaining that, oh, you're interjecting politics into this, into the whole cutoff effort. No, I'm not injecting politics into it. Politics is injecting itself into this. We're talking enormous amounts of money that are riding on the decisions that certainly the FRA would be making for the Amtrak project. And of course, New Jersey Transit project is a large project as well. But in terms of what politics means to the project, if you look at, for example, just the Andover project itself, but you look at, let's say, all the way to Scranton, we're talking 5 different congressional districts. Imagine how many congressional districts are involved with 69 corridors, which is the total number of corridors that are in the FRA's corridor ID program, at least at this point they are. So we'll get to that, but let's talk about that prediction. Now, this isn't from me, from Chuck Walsh. It's from Dr. Alan Lichtman, who has been making presidential predictions for 40 years now, actually over 40 years. His first prediction was for the second term of Ronald Reagan back in 1984. He made the prediction in 1982 for that. He's made every prediction since that time, with the exception of one, which is 2000, which is an outlier because that one went to the Supreme Court of the US. But he's even taken his model, which I'm going to discuss briefly, and retrospectively looked at every election back to 1860, which was the first election for Abraham Lincoln. So when Mr. Lichtman makes a prediction about the U.S. presidency, it has some weight to it. So as a result, we're going to go through it. We'll even keep score for you. And then look at it from this perspective, what does this mean in terms of the outlook for the cutoff, New Jersey Transit and Amtrak. Now, what Dr. Lichtman has done is created a model with 13, what he calls keys, or criteria, which are used to basically determine or predict who will win the U.S. presidency. Now, typically what you have is the incumbent president or the incumbent party, in this case would be the Democrats, represented by Kamala Harris. In our last update, she had not been actually officially chosen as the candidate, as President Biden had stepped down, versus the Republican, who would be Donald Trump. Now, the way this works, there are 13 different keys. If 6 or more go against the White House or the incumbent party, the Democrats, then the opposite party, the challenging party, in this case the Republicans, would be predicted to win. However, if 5 or fewer keys were to go against the incumbent party or the White House party, the Democrats, then it would be predicted that they would retain the White House. So here we go. Now, the first key is what is called midterm gains. In other words, and all this is from the perspective of the White House party. So in a sense, this outcome is a reflection on the performance of the party that is in power in the White House. It has very, very little to do with the challenging party in a sense. So the first key is for midterm gains, which is whether in 2020 or 2022 that the Democrats made any gains in Congress. Well, actually, they didn't. So as a result, the first key goes against the Democrats. So 1 out of 1 is now against the Democrats. The second key is the incumbency key. Well, the incumbent would have been Joe Biden, but Joe Biden is not running. So as a result, even though Kamala Harris is the vice president, she's not the incumbent. So as a result, the Democrats lose that key as well. So they're down 2 out of 2. Now, the third key is the primary contest for the Democrats in this case. I was referring to the Democratic Party. The Democrats chose Kamala Harris with basically no fight whatsoever. It was done very quickly, even after where Joe Biden stepped down. So as a result, they get that. So that's a plus on their side. So they gain that key. So right now, it's 2 against out of 3. The fourth key is the third party. If there's a third party candidate who's polling around 10% or more, that would go against the White House party. Well, in this case, Mr. Kennedy has dropped out, so essentially there is no third party. So that goes in favor of the Democrats. So now we're still at 2, but out of 4 keys that we've gone through. These two are really together. The short-term economy and the long-term economy are the 5th and 6th keys. The economy is actually in pretty good shape, even in terms of the global perspective, as well as, is there a recession on the horizon? No. I mean, it's been up and down, prices have been up, but in terms of its overall health, in terms of definition, it's doing okay. So those 2 keys actually go in favor of the White House. So now we've done a total of 6, and 2 of them are against the White House. The 7th is, has there been policy change during the time of the White House in the last 4 years, or actually 3.5 years, under President Biden? Yeah, there has been. It's really quite a bit different than the previous administration. And we talk about the infrastructure bill for it would certainly help reactivate the cutoff, but in general it was a very large bill, and then there have been other policies. I think it's fair to say that, and I'm not saying this, but Mr. Lichtman, or Dr. Lichtman, gave this one to the Democrats as well. So now we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're more than halfway there. Still only 2 keys have gone against the Democrats. Social unrest, really very little, if any, social unrest, so that goes in favor of the Democrats as well. Has there been a White House scandal? No, there have been problems, Hunter Biden's laptop and such, but it would have to directly involve the president, and it has not directly involved the president. So that one goes in favor of the Democrats as well. So we're now down to 9, with only 2 so far having gone against the White House. The next 2 involve charisma of both the incumbent and of the challenger. Well, neither really qualifies as a charismatic individual or candidate, such as might have been FDR or JFK or Ronald Reagan for that matter. So the White House loses 1 but gains 1 on that. So right now we're at 11, and only 3 have gone against the White House. Now, if you're doing the math, I'll go through the rest of this, but if you're doing the math, I think you already know what the result is. There are 2 other criteria or keys, and one is foreign policy failure and one is foreign policy success. Those are really up in the air, but in terms of the determination of this prediction, it doesn't really matter. But you would think that foreign policy failure, that, is Gaza going okay? Not that good, but is it a failure? No. Is it a success? No. The Ukraine, the same thing. It's sort of a stalemate. So at this point, I would say the worst case scenario is probably, even if both keys go, it doesn't really matter. What the determination is that, according to the keys, Vice President Kamala Harris will be the 47th president of the United States and be elected. Now, I understand that there might be a lot of skepticism about that. And I would direct you to actually look at what Dr. Lichtman has done. It'd be difficult for me to, in a sense, explain all that and in a sense, justify it all. But you can just go by success. And also, keep in mind, and you didn't see any polls in there. There was maybe a reference, of course, in the third party, but you have to realize that philosophically, a poll, when you see polls like in, July, for example, those change over time. They're a snapshot. What we're talking about here with Dr. Lichtman is the end result. In fact, you want to use an extreme example. I'm sure that everyone remembers President Michael Dukakis. No, of course you don't remember him. But in July of 1988, he was ahead of the vice president, similar situation in many ways, Vice President George H.W. Bush. He was ahead of him by 17 points. What happens? Vice President Bush becomes President Bush and wins by 8 points, a 25-point spread and change over that period of time. Yet this set of keys actually predicted that President Bush, Vice President Bush would become President Bush. So anyway, enough said about that. So the question is, okay, what does this mean? If Kamala Harris becomes president, what does that mean for the cutoff versus what would have been the case with former President Trump? Now, I covered that in the last update, so I don't feel compelled to talk a whole lot about what the scenario would have been under President Trump, but a Kamala Harris presidency will probably sustain the Biden legacy, if you will, particularly having to do with this line, the cutoff. It's no secret that, that President Biden, who hails from Scranton, has put quite a bit of political energy into trying to get this project to fruition. Now, politically, it's not really going to benefit him because he's bowing out. But certainly, he's interested in it, and I would not be surprised if he continues to lobby for it even after he's no longer president. Now, what does this mean in terms of like the staff level situation? I'll say both in New Jersey Transit and FRA who controls the process for the New York to Scranton corridor. For a good portion of this year, there's been a great deal of, I'll say, predictions going out there that President Trump was going to become president a second time. And that New Jersey Transit and FRA, perhaps, I don't know this for a fact, but maybe they need to be nudged now because they figure, it's all going to go to hell, and basically President Trump's going to be back and he's going to do this and do that, and none of this is going to help us, and why should we put any effort into it or really push for this, or at least wait until see what happens? I'm not saying that's what's actually happening at New Jersey Transit, but it's, for example, but it is interesting that the Andover project, which primarily was the lining of Roseville Tunnel, the securing of the rockfall mitigation in Colby Cut, and then the preparation of the right-of-way to Andover Station itself, about a little over a mile, that will be completed in November. Interesting timing. I don't know. That could be just a coincidence. But more importantly, as far as we're aware, there's been nothing that has been scheduled in terms of the next step, in terms of track laying and further right-of-way clearing and so forth, because that's only part of the project. There's a lot still to be done for the Andover project. Yet New Jersey Transit is not, at this point, saying anything about it. So we think they need a nudge, particularly since it doesn't look as if the dire predictions of earlier this year would be coming true. If we believe that Dr. Lichtman's prediction is going to come true. Now, in terms of the FRA and Amtrak, I don't think Amtrak really needs a nudge or anything. Interesting map which just came out from Mr. Buttigieg, who's the Secretary of Transportation, and you'll see there's a little line up there that points towards Scranton. We're still there, so that's a good news. But in terms of FRA, could they be sitting on their hands? Well, we don't know what's going to happen, that kind of thing. In all fairness to FRA, the Corridor ID project or program doesn't have any specific timelines associated with it. This has been a bit of an issue because they have their own mandates that they have to do, their regular work, so to speak, that they have to do, and the Federal Railroad Administration is compelled to do that stuff, and they're not overstaffed by any means from what we understand. So in all fairness to them, but still, there's a lot of money riding on this, and there's a lot of political support for different things to be done, including this project, of course. And so the FRA is, at some point, is going to start feeling the pressure. And this is the sort of a warning shot across the bow. It's like, hey, guys, get ready. This is, once again, the dire predictions don't necessarily look like they're going to happen. And that things should go, I'm going to say go back to normal, but the FRA was, as far as we know, there's been no change in the status of any of the 69 corridors, which back in December of 2023 were designated for Step 1. Actually, two of them, one from Georgia and one from Colorado, are actually designated for Step 2 from the get-go. But anyway, 67, including Scranton, were all in Step 1. Step 1 is the introductory step. Step 2 is what they call the preparation of the service development plan, and then Step 3 is where you get the big money, the engineering money, the construction money, and finally at the very end you run trains. So that's where we are. Will that prediction come true? Kamala Harris? We'll see. I mean, it's interesting. He's done this before, so unlike, I'll say, many or most of the pundits that are out there throwing stuff out there, Dr. Lichtman has a pretty good track record. So once again, stay tuned on that. For now, that's where we are. If anything else comes up in the meantime, certainly we'll do another update. Also look forward to some future parts where we'll be talking about some of the historical aspects of the cutoff. That'll be coming up sooner or later. So once again, thank you for watching. Look forward to the next update on the Lackawanna cutoff, number 22.
And I finally come to my final prediction and concluded that the White House party, the Democrats, now represented by Kamala Harris, would not lose any more than 5 keys. Thus, my prediction is Kamala Harris will be a precedent-breaking president of the United States, the first woman president in U.S. history.